Good evening. It's another episode of The Jam. I really hope that works. With me, as always, your host, Mayor Howard Vander. You can find me on Blue Sky, LinkedIn. I don't really care. Ask me for my address. What do I got to lose? Actually, on that note, I've been writing and sending out postcards to various people. Let me know your mailing address and I'll send you one too. Don't trace me. Don't dox me. Not into that game. You don't want to play it. First rule of business, know who you're doing business with. And in this case, it's me, Mayor Howard Vander. I've been kind of stuck lately on ideas for segments, not for lack of subjects to talk about, but the lack of anything innovative to say about them. Then I thought it would be really funny to do a segment one where I'm just staring into space, sighing for the better part of like 4 minutes. Or just be like, I'm not doing a first segment tonight because I don't want to, which brings us to segment two, sequencers. I think we are going to do sequencers in segment two because it's short. I guess we live in an age where, like Bo Burnham said, right, that, we've kind of collectively forgotten how to just shut up for a second. There's a lot of truth to that. I think maybe it's getting older. Maybe it's a debilitating lumbar and sciatic pain I'm dealing with lately. Maybe it's the fact that I know a lot of people who are dead or dying. That's weird. Onset of winter. It's a strange time in the world. Part of it is that you kind of reflect, in the face of life and death, the inexorable passage of time, everything that comes with that. Change is inevitable. Change is typically irreversible, at least in the significant, life marker ways. I'm not Benjamin Button here, and this episode is not like 3 hours. I didn't see that movie, and I don't really care to. I guess that links back to where I was going with that. I'm watching through The Sopranos for the very first time. And I'm not really posting about it or having conversations about it because at this point I'm like, well, everyone said it's an incredible show and really a high watermark for prestige television. And I watch it and I'm like, yeah, what everyone's saying is actually correct and I have nothing further to add. And there's something nice about that. You can signal appreciation, but, sometimes it's important to recognize how many people are not just thinking the same thing, but expressing the same thing. And maybe it's an academic background and the whole idea of citations and that, but if everyone's thinking the same thing, unless you are putting additional insight or a derivation on the idea or extending the conversation, is there genuinely a point to commenting on it other than your own vanity, so I can have a post I wrote on the subject, or more foolishly out of vanity, the idea that, no, people really, really want to hear what I have to say. And for most of us, we're all good people, but that's just frankly not true. Most of the world has no impetus to care about what we're saying or doing. Certainly not at the level of every single day decisions. The majority of stuff that stresses you out is of no concern to anyone else. And that may sound cold, but it's true and can be kind of liberating when you remember that. You don't need to be super anxious or highly scrutinizing yourself, because I assure you nobody else is. You can tell your inner voice to shut up sometimes. Or you could drown it out by putting on good stereo headphones and listening to Strutter really loud. I guess the other thing is, it's like I've talked about, how we want to use our time, both in the course of a day and on this earth. And, posting spicy takes because I want to argue with strangers and pick fights. I don't really like to do that. I don't see the point. I feel like I do see the point, and not just because I'm a troll, it feels good to provoke a conflict because then you can unload on somebody, whether with words or with the backup mic. You know, it's easy and tempting to think about that, especially when there's so much of the world making us stressed and making us angry. I absolutely do understand why people take that course of action, but I also try to be mindful that taking that course of action myself is not going to improve my circumstances or anybody else's. I can say no to that, and I think doing the noble thing is completely inversely correlated to doing the fun or convenient thing. But I guess there's worse things than discipline. Martial arts is a discipline. That's a good thing. Corporal discipline. And it's not a good thing. Don't hate your kids. That is another statement I think that is so banal. Didn't need commenting on, but now we have it on record. Mayor Howard Vander says, don't hit children. I guess all that to say is I don't really have a whole lot to say tonight, specifically. Well, maybe I do. Tomorrow marks 11 years since I last had a drink of alcohol. Obviously, I'm garf moding at the moment, drinking coffee at 8:30 p.m. Funny enough, I also do have, genuinely, I do have a large pan of lasagna on my oven. That's my reward for rolling some tape and getting some cursory editing done. If I'm using all of my time arguing with strangers, then I have no time to send postcards out to my friends and ask people questions about themselves and learn more about the world, or in the case of yesterday, going on a deep dive and reading the entirety of Alan Moore's Providence, which actually, relative to a lot of Moore's more recent work, I did find myself enjoying, and I'm probably going to think of some of the themes for a while. It's Lovecraft, and tell you what I think about Lovecraft sometime. Not all Howards. Am I right, folks? I think it's a very good read. It's clever, but it raises the, as Hollow put, the Wittgensteinian theme that when we put names or words for things, certain concepts or phenomena, we shape them. We shape them into a more discrete form. We shape it into something sensible. But prior to having the word anxiety, or prior to the word God, these are forces that we feel affectively, and they're forces that do impact us on an ongoing level. Gravity was a fundamental principle even before we could articulate what it is and what it does. So we do have some amount of control over things, and yet that influence is always mutual and always ongoing. And then it just parlays that into, well, what if there were certain elder gods that we brought forth by giving them names? Now, that's not what's happening in my life currently. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for a bunch of things, and I'm grateful for a bunch of people. And I guess for today, that is good enough. Also grateful that instead of blowing all of my money on booze, I was able to construct the lovely Helena machine, who I haven't been making nearly as much time for as I would like, and more practically to justify the cost of this unit. So I think I will let Helena do the talking. We'll offer her take and head right on into segment 2. So stick around. We are going to talk about sequencers briefly, and then we're going to let the woman speak. Okay, so it turns out for segment 2, sequencers, I don't really want to explain it. And in fact, on the break, I just locked into a really tight groove. So, Sequencers, basically, you can program it to do a lot of things. In fact, I have a key-based one where you type in the notes and then it will record and then loop them and can be variously configured. There are different types of sequencing. Who cares? I have one that's more of a classic 808 style step programmable one. And in my Ornament and Crime module, I am right now running an applet that allows me to send out 2 separate sequences from the same module. That's the backbone of this thing, and Helena has also been gracious enough to allow me to just package in some additional effects. It is being tempo driven by the key step. It is running 2 different sequences, one of which is using Brownian probability. So I'm going to turn the lights down low. We'll see how that goes. And, this episode is a lot shorter and a lot different. The point is, when you remember your finitude and you remember that there's no real stakes to what you're doing, things get more fun, because then it can be whatever you want it to be. And so can you. Helena, take it away.